Chapter 7. Management of Houseplants. There are some general rules that will apply to taking care of all plants in the house. Then there are several groups, the different sorts in which are handled more or less alike. And lastly, there are the individual requirements of the plants in the several groups to be considered. Information about all these varieties, as given in the usual way, results in a more or less confusing mass of detail. It is for the purpose of getting this information into as plain a form as possible that the instructions in the first chapters of this book have been given in such detail. And those instructions should be used in conjunction with the following pages. The beginner cannot expect to fully comprehend the suggestions given until the plain everyday operations of plant growing have become familiar. Much of what has been said in the previous pages has borne upon the several points of managing plants successfully in the house. It will be of use, however, to have those various suggestions brought together in condensed form. In the first place, it must be remembered that at best, it is hard to get conditions in the living room that will be suitable for the healthy growth of plants. Every effort should be made to prepare a place for them in which such conditions may be made as nearly ideal as possible. Plenty of light, evenly regulated temperature, moisture in the air. For most houseplants, the temperature should be 50 to 55 at night and 65 to 75 during the day. An occasional night temperature of 45 or even 40 will not do great harm, but if reached frequently will check the growth of the plants. Air should be given every day when the temperature of the room will not be too greatly lowered thereby. Avoid direct drafts, as sudden chills are apt to produce bad results. Even on very cold days, fresh air may be let in indirectly through a window open in an adjoining room or through a hall. It is better, when possible, to give a little ventilation during an hour or two than to rush to too sudden a lowering of the temperature by trying to do it all in 15 minutes. The amount of water which should be given will depend both upon the plant and upon the season. During the dull days of winter and during the resting season of all plants, very little water will be required. It should be given on bright mornings. During early fall and late spring, when the pots or boxes dry out very rapidly, water in the evening. In either case, however, withhold water until the soil is beginning to get on the dry side, and then water thoroughly. Water should be given until it runs down through the saucers, but should not be allowed to remain there. Sometimes it will be beneficial to moisten the foliage of plants without wetting the soil. Just after repotting and in fighting plant lice, red spider, and other insect enemies, see Chapter 17. This treatment will be necessary. A fine rose spray on the watering can may be used, but a rubber plant sprinkler costing about 65 cents will be very much better, as with it the water will be applied in a finer spray with a great deal more force, and to either the upper or under surface of the leaves, a point of great importance. Plants growing in windows, where the light strikes them only or mostly from one side, should be frequently turned to prevent their growing one-sided. Also, do not hesitate to use knife, scissors, and fingers in keeping them symmetrical and shapely. One of the greatest mistakes that amateurs make is in being afraid to cut an ungainly or half-leafless branch. Instead of injuring a plant, such pruning frequently is an actual benefit. If neglected, dust will quickly gather on the leaves and clog their pores. And as the plants have no way of breathing but through their leaves, you can see what the result must be. Syringing, mentioned above, will help. They should also be wiped clean with a soft, dry cloth, especially such plants as palms, rubbers, Rex begonias. Do not use olive oil or any other sticky substance on the cloth. Always remove at once any broken, dead, or diseased leaf or flower. Do not let flowering plants go to seed. Nothing else will so quickly bring the blooming period to a close. Do not try to force your plants into continuous growth. Almost without exception, they demand a period of rest, and if you do not allow them to take it when nature suggests, they will take it themselves when you do not want them to. The natural rest period is during the winter. During this time, a very little water will do, and no repotting or manuring should be attempted. It is, however, desirable in some cases, as with many of the flowering plants, to change the season bloom, as we want their beauty during the winter. In such cases, they should be made to rest during the summer by withholding water and keeping them disbudded. Many beginners get the idea that as soon as any plant has filled its pot with roots, it must be immediately shifted to a larger one. While this is, as a rule, true with small plants being grown on, it is not at all true of mature plants, especially those wanted to bloom in the house. When a shift has been given, at the beginning of the growing period, no further change should be necessary during the winter. It will, however, be well, if not imperative, to furnish food in the form of liquid manures when the soil in the pot has become filled with roots. It should be applied from 1 to 3 times a week, the former being sufficient for a plant showing ordinary growth. All the animal manures, cow, horse, sheep, hen, etc., are good to use in this way, but cow manure is the safest and best. Place 3 or 4 inches of half-rotted manure in a galvanized iron pail, fill with water, and after standing a few hours, it will be ready for use. The pail can be refilled. As long as the liquid becomes the color of weak tea, it will be strong enough to use. Give from a gill to a pint at each application to a 6 or 8 inch pot. The other manures should not be made quite so strong. For liquid chemicals, see page 19, or mix up the following: 5 pounds nitrate of soda, 3 of nitrate of potash, and 2 of phosphate of ammonia, and use 1 ounce of the mixture dissolved in 5 or 6 gallons of water. At the beginning of the growing period and at frequent intervals during the early growth of plants, they must be repotted. The operation is described on page 40. As soon as danger of late frost is over in the spring, the plants should be got out of the house. From left to right, cabbage seedlings just right for transplanting, seedlings of stalks, lanky seedlings that have been too thickly sown. These last should be set deeply as indicated by the cross line. An attractive and efficient flower bay was made here by waterproofing the floor, building plant shelves, and isolating the whole when necessary with curtains. Okay, as soon as danger of late frost is over in the spring, the plants should be got out of the house. It is safest to harden them off, first by leaving them a few nights with the windows wide open or in a sheltered place on the veranda. Those which require partial shade may be kept on the veranda or under a tree. Most of them, however, will do best in the full sun and should, if wanted for use in the house a second season, be kept in their pots. The best way to handle them is to dig out a bed 6 or 8 inches deep. The sod and earth taken out may be used in your dirt heap for next year. And fill it with sifted coal ashes. In this plunge, that is, bury the pots up to their rims. If set on the surface of the soil, it will be next to impossible to keep them sufficiently wet unless they are protected from the direct rays of the sun by an overhead screening of lath nailed close together or protecting cloth waterproofed. Where many plants are grown for the house, such a shed, open on all sides, is sometimes made. Care must be taken not to let plants in plunged pots root through into the soil. This is prevented by lifting and partly turning the pots every week or so. They will not root through into the coal cinders as rapidly as into the soil, and better drainage is secured. Watch the soil in the pots, not that in which they are plunged, when deciding about watering. For most plants, a thorough watering, tops and all, once every afternoon ordinarily will not be too much. Plants such as geraniums and heliotrope, which are wanted for blooming in early winter, should be kept rather dry and all buds pinched off. Do not shift them to new pots until 2 or 3 weeks before time to take them in.